Fanalysis uses the in-depth data from fantasy football combined with the betting trends to find you the smartest plays of the week. So let's bring in a sports investment analyst from Pickswise, Jared Smith once again. Jared, we start things off with the Cowboys may be the only undefeated team against the spread, but the Packers are really close. They've beaten the spread 5 straight weeks. Now 7.5-point favorites against Washington. I've seen this line all the way up to 9.5. So what do you think that's saying to the Sharps?
Yeah, and this line's been kind of on a roller coaster this week, and I'm a little bit surprised, but I guess if you consider Green Bay's defense, I think that's where some of the sharper bettors, once that line does get to 8, 9, I even saw it touch 10 very briefly. Once it did, it bounced right back down. Now it's settling around 7.5, 8. I think that's a reasonable spot to buy the Packers. I think Green Bay is humming right now. The one concern that I have is they face the Cardinals on the road next Thursday night. So you might think that there might be a little bit of deceleration in the second half. Maybe Green Bay first half is an alternate way to play this. But I was really concerned watching that Washington offense last Sunday against Kansas City. The Chiefs defense, we've discussed it, Steve. They are not good, and they really struggled in that spot. Now they have to go on the road. Taylor Heineke at Lambeau Field. He's been very volatile, high ceiling, but also low floor. Green Bay's defense, if I had to lean to a matchup that I think is better for Green Bay, I would say they're slightly better than Kansas City's defense right now. And I would expect Taylor Heineke to kind of be in that shell. Of course, he could surprise us, but I feel I trust Aaron Rodgers a little bit more.
I want to flip it and talk more about that Washington defense because last year they were one of the top defenses in the NFL. And since the opening season loss, Aaron Rodgers has looked like an MVP candidate once again. However, there is a little nugget here. Interestingly, when he is pressured, he has the worst passer rating in the NFL under pressure. Do you envision any scenario where this Washington defense refines that form and puts pressure on Aaron Rodgers?
I haven't seen it yet. I did watch a little bit of that Chiefs game on Sunday. Mahomes' mistakes were self-inflicted wounds, not Washington pressure, Washington forcing the issue. I agree that they'll have to do that if they want to be successful against Aaron Rodgers. I'd be curious if that nugget is from this season or if it's a longer sample size, because I was under the impression that Aaron was pretty good facing the blitz. Maybe it's just this year.
It is a small sample size. Okay. Because if you want to throw a real caveat into this, it's that he has the most protected pocket in the NFL this year. So it does look like it's a little bit of a red herring here because he's not faced pressure that often.
And listen, I do this all the time. You can find a stat to back up almost any argument. But I think
I was kind of dangling it out there for you. That's actually why I threw it out there. I wanted to kind of dangle it out there to see if you would if this had any merit to it, right?
Well, I think every statistic has merit, but in the context of what we're trying to discuss, I agree that the Packers' offensive line's been playing a lot better than a lot of people thought. And I think there's a mental edge because they know they're about to get David Bakhtiari back. He's not going to play this week, but he will return soon. Frankly, I think he's one of the best. He might be the best left tackle in the league. So I think there's a lot of positives with Green Bay's offense right now. And if you're telling me that the shortest of the big chalky favorites this week, we'll talk about Tampa Bay and the Rams and even Arizona, the shortest of those numbers is Aaron Rodgers, who I think is playing at an unbelievably high level against a Washington defense that's really struggled. I think that's a pretty decent spot, a low-risk spot to invest your money.
Yeah, you're feeling pretty safe there. Another huge spread is that Rams and that Lions game. The Rams are favored by 14.5. Is Sean McVay going to use this game as a lesson to his former quarterback, Jared Goff, on how to properly run the Rams offense?
It's fun. It's funny because everyone that I've asked, so I usually have rounds with about 3 or 4 bookmakers, middle of the week, early stages of the week, to get a sense of how things are forming. I asked them all the same questions. Does the revenge angle do anything for this spread here? And, the answer was no, resoundingly. And I think in general, coaching moves and off-field stuff might sound good to us and we hype it up in the media, but I think on the field, the Rams are a better football team than the Lions. Like that to me is at the end of the day, Goff, Stafford, any of that hubbub, the Rams players are just infinitely better. Every number you look at, Rams are a top 3 unit, Lions are a bottom 3 unit, and that's where I just have to base my handicap. Sure, does part of Jared Goff probably want to stick it to his former team, and he maybe will try to make that extra throw or make that extra move and be a little more maybe. Very tough to handicap that. Here's what I do know: the talent gap is massive in this game, and 14 is, in my eyes, a relatively short price considering. I think if you play this game out 100 times, I think the Rams win by 3 touchdowns more than 50% of the time.
14.5 is a short price when you're talking about and it's really, you're right, because of what Goff has to play with here. But this is a Lions team that is winless. However, they played both Baltimore and Minnesota very close up until the final minute. So the fact that it's going over that key number of 2 touchdowns and backdoor covers happen so frequently, does that give you just a hint of pause a little bit there?
Absolutely. Anytime the initial anchor bias against laying double digits in the NFL is it's so many points. That's where your brain goes immediately. Backdoor, there's so many points there. They're going to get a late cover. And of course that could happen. But my bet is out of 100 times that they play the game, I'm betting that 55 or more finishes Rams plus 14.5, winning by 15 or more. And yes to that. That's a thumbs up handicap for me. And that's all I can do. Once they kick the ball off, Steve, anything can happen. But I do think before the game starts, the gap between these two teams, in my eyes, is bigger than 2 touchdowns.
All right, well, let's talk about another quarterback that's having an incredible season. 44-year-old Tom Brady, who's actually on pace to break Peyton Manning's record of most yards in one single season. His Bucs are 12-point favorites hosting the Bears. You think Brady remembers what happened against the Bears last year? Do you think that's in his mind at all?
You know, it's funny because I just, talked about, I just poo-pooed any revenge angles or narratives. If there's one guy, if there's one quarterback that has this reminder of, and let's be honest, it's happened to me. It's happened to you. You're on the air. You flub a word. You say something. It's not your finest moment. There is a part of me that if there's ever a time for Brady to feel embarrassed, he shouldn't be about any part of his career. But that was not his finest moment, forgetting what down it was. Yeah. And I'm assuming he remembers those types of things. So, yes, that angle factors into me. And here's how it factors in for me. Let's say the Bucs are up by 6 or 7 points late in the game, and they could drive to just run out the clock. Tampa Bay has been so aggressive on offense this year. They don't run the ball. They pass it the majority of the time. We talk about backdoors a lot. I could see Tampa Bay front dooring this spread, meaning they go in for that late score with 2-3 minutes left in the game that pushes it from 6 to 13 or 14. And that is the finishing blow for the Chicago team. And this Bucs defense is playing phenomenal. Chicago's not going to be able to run the ball against Tampa Bay, which means it's all going to be on Justin Fields. And I could see this game playing out similar to his first start against the Browns. Great defensive front. They didn't find the end zone in that game. This is a scary spot for Tampa Bay because they are an incredibly aggressive team, and Chicago's graded out very poorly. I could see the Bucs continuing some of that aggression this week.
And by the way, you are absolutely correct about remembering your mistakes, and because of that,
yes,
I will never mispronounce Shesterkin's name once again.
Okay. We always remember those moments in our careers.
They locked into your brain. It's seared. It's a scar that you can't get rid of. All right, but let me flip that over, because in 3 starts, Justin Fields has actually only attempted more than 20 passes one time. We know that this Buccaneers defense and the back end of their defense is kind of hurting right now. Do you see Matt Nagy possibly unleashing Fields and letting him throw the ball a little more?
They might, and if they do, what it does in this game for me is it makes me want to live bet the over. Because I think the numbers and the metrics right now are grading out the Bears offense as a low volume team. Doesn't pass a lot, relies on the running game, slow clock, slow tempo. If Matt Nagy decides to flip a switch, all of a sudden the over becomes a play, because then the Bucs will match that tempo, and clearly they have the horses to do so with Brady and all of his weapons. So that to me is an interesting dynamic where a total could be very wrong on a game, and we've seen some Tampa Bay games get up there with scores before. Sure. If Chicago flips that switch, the over is in play, live over for sure.
All right, let's talk about that Colts-Niners game. San Francisco is getting healthy. They are going to be getting Jimmy Garoppolo back. The big question here is, does his return add stability or instability to the QB situation?
Great question. the odds makers are noticing two things from sharp bettors this season and last year. First, about the Niners, a lot of uncertainty about that quarterback situation. It feels settled when Jimmy G is under center, but we don't even know if he's healthy, and he hasn't played in 3 weeks. That's a long stretch of time to just come in cold. You know, there's no rehab starts like there is in Major League Baseball, and he's facing a Colts defense that has been fantastic. And DeForest Buckner, he's been sitting around for 2 years wondering why the Niners traded him away, and now he gets his chance to. Again, I don't put stock in revenge angles, but when it's a defensive lineman and a banged up quarterback, you could do the math on what could happen there. And I think DeForest Buckner and that Colts defense has been absolutely brilliant this year. On the other side, Carson Wentz has looked better than we thought. And the second part of what the bookmakers and the sharps are learning this year and last, there's a love affair between smart money and Frank Reich. Yeah. And I think Frank Reich is becoming one of those coaches that is undervalued in the market every week. The Colts are not a sexy team by any stretch of the imagination. Carson Wentz does not move the needle, despite the fact that he's looked good. But the running game is sound. They play defense. They travel well. They're a smart team. They're well coached. They do the little things well. That's why the smart money loves Indy. I think Indy money line's a great play here, but I'll gladly take 4.5 most of the market right now.
And you say the sharps love Frank Reich because he's been undervalued. A guy that's been overvalued as a head coach has actually been Kyle Shanahan. There have been 30 games in his career where the Niners have been the favorite, and the underdogs have covered 71% of the time.
Great nugget.
Is that... I know long-term trends aren't something that you really try to target when you're looking at games, but sometimes those long-term trends carry a little bit more weight.
100%. That one carries weight. Here's why. What does it tell you? It tells you that there is a bias towards Shanahan and his prowess of planning offenses, and there's maybe a little bit of an overvaluing of their point totals every week. Because really, in reality, they really should be 2 or 3 points less than what they're being graded out as. And that is just a little insecurity with Shanahan's system and injuries as well. They've been very unfortunate the last 2 years. And that, call it bad luck, call it, free will, fate, whatever. They've been very banged up over the last 2 years. And this week's no different.
Well, that's how he sees his top plays of the week. Make sure you check out our other segment on why the Jets and the Giants are the best bet into a teaser this week. For Jared Smith at Pickswise, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.